Hi, my name is Tom Gale. I'm the Director of Governmental Relations for the Georgia Municipal Association. Thanks for attending the Coffee and Conversations meeting. I want to talk to you briefly about the need to be engaged going into the 2021 legislative session. We anticipate this deadly pandemic to continue to have its grip on Georgia, but that doesn't mean that the legislative session will come to a halt. We still anticipate many issues in play affecting municipal governments. We anticipate continuing the fight against state-level preemption of locally established residential design standards. We continue to fight the short-term rental companies that want to wrest control from city governments on inspections and local regulations. We anticipate attacks on various revenue sources that cities need, particularly as they try to climb out of the financial stress from this pandemic. And we expect every session various bills to limit home rule at preventing city councils from making decisions in the interest of the citizens that you serve. Look, it's very important to get to know your legislators, to get engaged, and to be ready to be active this coming legislative session in 2021. So with that, I'm pleased to have with us two political insiders who will talk a little bit about the election and what they see in the months ahead. We've got Theron Johnson of Paramount Consulting, who's a Democratic political operative who served on the Biden campaign here in Georgia. And we've got Todd Ream of Georgia Pundit, who's a Republican political operative who provides political consulting for various campaigns. With that, let's start the conversation with Theron and Todd. So Theron Johnson, Todd Ream, thanks so much for being with the Georgia Municipal Association today. We are hoping that you'll share your insights on the recent election and talk about what you think will happen in the coming weeks and months ahead. First, I want to get your thoughts on the state house elections. There was widespread prediction nationwide and also in Georgia of the potential for a blue wave, and there were high hopes among the Democrats in the House that they would take potentially up to 16 seats. That didn't happen. Can you tell me a little bit why you think that is and what you think it means for the governance leading into the 2021 session in the House of Representatives?
I'll go ahead and start with that. I think the main lesson that, or one of the main lessons we can take away from this is that voters don't necessarily lump all of the down ballot races in with the presidential candidates anymore. A lot of those predictions were based on the assumption that President Trump's personality, his way of being in office would so turn off folks that it would bleed down the ballot and hurt Republicans at all levels. And it just appears that didn't happen. I think whether that's because people are getting used to President Trump's style in some fashion, or whether they're just coming around to the idea that that's him, and that doesn't necessarily mean my local folks are like that. That kind of got disengaged from between presidential politics and local politics. I think one thing that you're going to see going forward is Republicans at all levels looking at what they did to try to figure out how they won, because I think there is some level of surprise. I think a lot of Republicans thought it was going to be a lot worse of a bloodbath, and they're going to say, okay, what did we do right this year? Do sort of these postmortems. What did we do right this year, and how do we use that going forward to set up for the next set of elections to be as strong as we possibly can?
I think the thing I want to first start off saying is that there was a blue wave in Georgia. It was not the sort of big sort of very tall and wide blue wave that we all were anticipating, but it was a blue wave in Georgia. Georgia now is a blue state. You saw that with the election results. While we are still counting votes as we are talking today, and we'll probably be recounting votes for a while in this state, but Joe Biden is going to come out victorious in this state, and that's something that when Todd and I talked a few weeks ago to GMA, that was one of the things that I sort of predicted. Secondly, we can't negate the fact, and I know we're wanting to focusing on the House of Representatives, but we sent two members of Congress back to Congress, and that is Congresswoman Lucy McBath and Congressman Sanford Bishop, and also Congressman Hank Johnson and Congressman Scott. But we pretty much know that those two individuals are going to win. But the big win was definitely Congresswoman Lucy McBath. And how can we forget that Carolyn Bordeaux, who came this close to winning 2 years ago, is now looking like she's going to be the Congresswoman elect from the 7th District. And so let's get down to the House. And so while we did not get 16 seats, we did pick up 3 seats. And these were 3 seats that we felt very comfortable that we were going to win. And yes, we wanted to win more. Now, on a sadder note, we did lose our minority leader, Bob Trammell, who's a good man, who has done a fantastic job of leading the minority caucus in the House. And we also picked up a seat in the state Senate. And so, as Todd knows this for a while, two of us have been friends. I've been saying that we have been building up to this moment. And so, while we did not get majority in the House or the Senate, I believe it puts us in a very, very good position going into 2022. And we got to wait and see about what's going to happen with reapportionment. But even with reapportionment, I believe Democrats and different lawyers and different groups are going to make sure that we do our best to implore the Republicans to try to be as fair as they possibly can when they're redrawing these lines for the 2022 races. But again, big success for Democrats in Georgia. I'm happy this morning. This is the biggest smile Todd has probably seen me have on my face in a long time. And we have been waiting 18 years for this moment, but we're not done yet. I believe that we're going to pick up more seats in 2022 and more seats in 2024.
I want to circle back for just a second and hit on something that Darren talked about. He said there was a blue wave this year, and that's true. But I think what's interesting to me is it didn't hit the entire shoreline uniformly. So if you look at Gwinnett County, which is where I grew up, that blue wave just decimated everything Republican. They lost the sheriff, the district attorney, majority of everything. Just took down everything. The good news for Gwinnett County was an unprecedented high number of people voting for the school bond referendum. I think that margin of victory being much higher than it normally would be is largely attributable to those blue wave voters. At the same time, Gwinnett County should have lost. We expected to lose more Republicans at the state house and state Senate level. And so while the blue wave definitely hit the suburban district 6 and 7, definitely took out a lot of Gwinnett County sort of collateral damage, it didn't really hit the state house and state Senate campaigns, partly because of the way so many of those districts are lopsidedly drawn to favor one party or another, which is largely a remnant of the old Voting Rights Act. But also, I think because of the coordinated campaign that was done, particularly in the state house, led largely by Speaker Ralston and his folks, that really made a difference in probably a half a dozen or more campaigns where they were able to retain what everybody else thought was a lost cause. So for people like Theron and I who make some of our living with campaigns, the good news is that we can say, once again, campaigns do appear to matter. I don't know how you deal with the fact that there are some candidates going forward, some incumbents who are just going to lose as a matter of demographic destiny. But for campaign professionals, the fact that you can actually run a campaign and make a difference again, which was in question after 2016, is the overwhelming good news.
Tom, if I can jump in real quick, I would be remiss if I did not mention Nicole Hendrickson, African-American female who became the new chair elect for the Gwinnett County Gwinnett County Commission. And also, we can't forget Cobb County, Lisa Cupid, who is now elected as the chairwoman-elect for the Cobb County Board of Commissioners. And we also picked up some commission seats along that commission, which now, for the first time, I think in a long time, if not ever, you'll have a majority Democratic county commission in Cobb County. And so, again, I've been in Todd's position before. I've talked to GMA and I've said, well, you know what, we didn't pick up as many seats as we wanted to, or we keep continuing to put cracks in that ceiling, and we're going to pick up more seats than the Republicans. No, listen, I'm coming on this conversation today feeling empowered, and just want to thank the voters of Georgia for voting for Democrats. Again, we would have wanted to pick up more seats, but if you look at what we did on the presidential level, look at what we did on the U.S. Senate level. I mean, who thought that David Perdue was going to be in a runoff with Jon Ossoff? I did. I told GMA that. I thought that Jon Ossoff has learned valuable lessons, and now he's forced an incumbent 6-year U.S. Senator who was well-financed to go to a runoff. And then also, we can't forget PSC. Commission Daniel Blackman is a good friend of mine. Went to Clark Atlanta University. He's now in a runoff for the Public Service Commission. And so, again, there is a blue wave in Georgia, and I love the shoreline metaphor that you use, Todd. That's why you're so good at what you do. But I tell you this, based on the amount of calls that I'm getting, based on the amount of attention that Georgia is getting from all over the world, people saw what we did in Georgia, and they saw that we had been working very, very hard. And we not only did it with a, sort of a machine type style of politics, it was the Biden coalition. And the Biden coalition consists of a lot of new voters. And we got to give a shout out to a lot of the young people, Tom, who showed up all across the state of Georgia, but particularly in the metro counties, that I think was a difference in us winning or losing in the state.
Well, one thing that Todd mentioned was the demographic destiny, and whether that will lead to incumbents, particularly Republican incumbents in the future, being vulnerable. But Theron, you mentioned the upcoming reapportionment session. That reapportionment session is going to potentially blunt the effect of this demographic destiny that Todd mentioned. But can you both give me your thoughts on whether reapportionment can build a bulwark for continued Republican dominance, or whether it's really a potential fool's errand to try to blunt those changing demographics?
Yeah, I don't think it's Republican dominance anymore, Tom. Again, while we didn't win 16 seats, no one probably, I didn't think we were going to win 16 seats. I would have loved to win 16 seats, but trying to take out any incumbent member of anything, whether it's state house, state senate, school board, coroner, or president of the United States, is a very, very difficult task. But the reason why we were really focusing on trying to get control of either the state senate or the state house is because exactly what you just asked, and it is reapportionment. Now, listen, I'm going to come on here, and Todd knows what I'm going to say. I'm going to say, you know what, Republicans have got to be fair. Don't draw lines that pack districts that favor their Republican incumbent members. And also, let's not try to gerrymander the reapportionment maps to sort of make more majority districts, so that way you can sort of protect some of your conservative Republican members in the metro area and also in the rural areas. But I would say this, and this is the reason you guys bring us back. If Democrats were in power, yes, we would probably draw districts that favor us picking up seats, but more importantly, we want to protect our caucus members. And so Speaker Ralston, who's a dear friend of mine, was very, very specific about how important it was for him to retain his caucus members. And look, you got to give him credit. I mean, he did a pretty good job of that. I mean, he was able to only lose 3 in the House, but he still now holds a 13-seat majority. And so I think what you're going to see, though, Tom, is that you're going to see outside groups. You're going to see a lot of different people working with the Republicans to, quite frankly, let's draw some very fair and competitive districts where Republicans don't go down this sort of trap where allowing Democrats to say, you know what, they're continuing to divide people in Georgia. Look at how they're drawing the maps. They're trying to, remove certain members from the district. They're trying to pack all the African Americans and Hispanic and Latino votes and the, Indian votes and the Asian votes in one district, and try to pack more white people into this district to protect this member. But that's why it was so important for the Republicans to retain control in the Senate and the House, because now they're going to be able to draw some legislative seats that will ultimately favor their membership.
So a couple things. One is that this will be a redistricting unlike previous ones, because parts of the Voting Rights Act that controlled election procedures, redistricting procedures are no longer. And I expect that between now and redistricting, however the elections that determine what goes on in Washington shake out, there will be a lot of discussion about putting back in place some of those parts of the Voting Rights Act. So we'll have to keep an eye on what happens nationally as that forms a large part of the backdrop. But one of the things that I think was important that Speaker Ralston did in steering the effort of the State House caucus was, it appears to me that he has tamped down some of the opposition that existed to him beforehand. The only challenger to him for the Republican nomination for Speaker was a fellow out of Gwinnett County, who's simply being a Republican in Gwinnett County probably puts him on a bad list to be on over the coming years. But he only got 2 votes, presumably his own and one other member's. I think before this election cycle, there might have been 5 or 6 to 10 folks who were willing to state some level of opposition to the speaker. And so I think by sort of pulling together the resources and putting on the campaign that he did, he really united the caucus behind him, which helps with both redistricting and with legislating in the next couple of years. But I also want to say this. I want to say that the lesson is not lost on, as far as I can tell, the House leadership, the House Republican leadership, that they need to think about the way they've been doing business, and the narrowly tailored legislation to appeal to the right wing of the Republican Party is going to get limited traction in the State House, and particularly in the State House in coming years. I think if you look at the areas where we had really highly contested elections for the State House, Republicans were talking a lot about issues that are not typically associated with Republicans. They were talking about funding for maternal mortality to improve survival rates of women giving birth, particularly economically disadvantaged women. They were talking a lot about the hate crimes legislation and some other stuff that would not have been considered Republican, capital R Republican type legislation before. That was really the centerpiece for some of these campaigns that were in more contested districts. And so I think the State House is, I think Speaker Ralston is likely to try to keep a lid on the divisive stuff that always percolates up through the caucus, and concentrate on those issues that they will feel help them turn back the blue wave at the State House level.
So this is my last question, and if you both could try to answer it in 30 seconds each. What advice do you have for city officials to engage with legislators and statewide elected officials into the 2021 session?
Well, one of the things, Tom, very well in your organization, the Georgia Municipal Association, you guys are always ranked as, if not the top industry, sort of lobbying, government affairs entities. You guys are always near the top. So that the work really is between now and January 1st. I spend a lot of time, like you guys do, traveling around the state, visiting with legislators on both sides, right? Going to their districts, talking to them about some of the legislative priorities that my clients will have. And so I think that for GMA members, now is the time to really focus on spending some quality time with these legislators, going to their districts, getting to know them, start kind of messaging your items of priority now, and don't just go to people who you're comfortable with. And a lot of times people make mistakes. They just want to go to the chairman or the chairwoman of the committee, but start talking to those members of the committee now, because who knows what January is going to look like. I believe if these numbers continue to trend the way they are with this deadly pandemic, with this COVID-19 crisis that we're in right now, we may still be in a virtual posture. Or if they continue to maybe go down, which right now they're not, but they hopefully they will, then we may have sort of a confluence of virtual with being in person. But either way, I would tell you all to definitely get involved. And then secondly, listen, cities are going to have a great deal of influence because you guys at the local level have been fighting this deadly pandemic since day one, and you guys have been figuring out how you can balance your budget and protect your homeowners. And so I implore you to now get involved with the state legislators and the executive branches of the state government now.
This is a problem that that lobbyists are trying to figure out as well, is how to engage. We spent a good chunk of this year in this sort of never land between the beginning of the session and the end of the session. It's not clear to me how much thought has been given to the extent to which the legislature is going to have in-person meetings. Are they going to still meet in session for the big votes and maybe figure out a way to do more virtual committee work? I'm not sure what that is, but what I would say is this is the time to be not just looking at how to get in touch with your legislators, how to stay in touch with them, how to continue to appeal to them. But I think this is a time when the municipalities actually have a lot more to offer state legislators than they often do, because while the state legislature had the, I don't know if you want to call it a luxury, they had the ability to take 6 months off basically from the active session. Generally, the municipalities haven't been able to do that. Y'all have had to figure out how to continue to do business in a very difficult environment. I would say that, you know, for those of y'all who have been having virtual meetings week in, week out, you've probably got a lot better idea of how all the software works really well, and you've got all of the bugs sort of ironed out better than the legislature has, because they just haven't really been doing as much virtual stuff. And so figuring out how to make what you have gone through during this pandemic useful to your legislators. I think if you can say, hey, you know, by the way, we've got this great Zoom set up. If you have meetings at the Capitol that you can't go to and you need a place other than your home to do Zoom from, come into City Hall and we've got this room set up. We'll set it aside for you for an hour or whatever, have a technician on hand, whatever, sort of making their lives a little bit easier with the hard-earned lessons from the pandemic, I think is a way to help sort of show the strengths of the cities and how you do business, as well as to foster better relationships, closer relationships in an uncertain time of what the legislature is going to look like.
Well, Todd Ream, Theron Johnson, thank you both for sharing your insights with our city officials, and we wish you both well into the rest of the holiday season and into the new year.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Brad.